So I'll go through these relatively quickly. Most of the changes that we're making to the small areas are pretty minor. And so, like I said, I'll go through them relatively quickly. And if you have any questions, just feel free to stop me, or if anything seems like it's not minor, we can talk about it a little bit more. And then Shanna has some, may be able to clarify a couple of them. So Shanna, feel free to jump in if there are things that I'm not saying right. Hang on one second. Okay, so this first one is for the downtown area. And basically this is just kind of clarifying and reducing the rear setbacks in the downtown area for for most of the zones. So not a huge change, and it's mostly just kind of bringing it back into consistency with the previous downtown 2020 sector plan.
This change is, I think it's good, and
Okay.
it's consistent with Pat Davis's amendment in the 2019 update to make the similar change citywide.
Awesome, thanks for that. This next one is for lot sizes. So in the contextual standards, we've added downtown as one of the areas where you can do smaller lot sizes than you would normally be able to do given the other contextual standards in UCMS and PT areas. Right now, we just added this in the 2019 annual update that you could go smaller if you're subdividing lots in existing neighborhoods, and this extends that to the downtown center as well. And then the second one on this slide just changes from the downtown area, which was a mapped area, to the downtown center, which is an existing mapped center from the comprehensive plan. Do you have any comments or questions? Okay, sticking with the downtown area, this is related to rooftop signs. So this is the one that Carrie mentioned to allow rooftop signs in and near the downtown center. Any questions? Oops, any questions on that one?
Yeah, how is that going to work?
What do you mean?
Okay, rooftop signs near the downtown center. So how does that modify what it looks like nowadays?
So now rooftop signs aren't allowed in these areas. So this would mean that if there were a building downtown that wanted a rooftop sign, they could put a sign on top of the building as long as it met these rules about size. So it has to be mostly open. So it couldn't be like a billboard on top of a building. A good example of this, Jocelyn, for you is like the Nob Hill Shopping Center sign, where it's kind of mostly open, but just says Nob Hill across the top of the building. That's sort of the intent of this rule, is that most of it has to be open. You could just have like lettering or other kind of like symbols on the top of the building.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Still downtown, but now going into the downtown neighborhood area. This change makes a couple of clarifications to parking location, just to bring the language and the IDO to be a little bit more consistent with the previous sector plan language. So adding the rear yard setback for detached garages. Right now, citywide, that is a 3-foot, I believe, or 2-foot minimum. And this would make it so that in the downtown neighborhoods area, it would be a 5-foot minimum, which is consistent with the old rules. And then also adding in the sort of setback for the garage behind the facade of the building. Any questions on that one?
No, it predates my time, but I think our office wrote the downtown neighborhood sector plan, so I probably can't complain about it.
Fair enough. And now going to East Downtown, this is another situation where we're just bringing back in some language from the sector plan that wasn't carried forward super clearly. And this one is actually really just a clarification. So this is some language that changed as a clarification in the 2019 update. And we talk it basically, if you're doing a parking structure, you have to do it mostly with commercial uses. But if you don't have commercial uses, you have to have a wall. And this is just clarifying that that could be the wall of the building, like the actual parking structure, especially if the building is built up to the property line, or if it's set back a little bit, you would do a 3 to 4 foot wall, or at least 3 foot high wall along the edge of the property. And that's to provide screening from car lights that are in the parking structure. Any questions?
No.
And then this is the same thing, but in the East Downtown Historic Protection Overlay. We hadn't made the same change of language from the 2019 update, so this brings forward the language that we made in the Character Protection Overlay for the Historic Protection Overlay, and then also adds in that same language about the wall could be part of the building or a separate wall. And then for Nob Hill Highland, this is just some clarifying language. The Nob Hill sector plan has language about, or had language about kind of wanting the buildings in Nob Hill to look like, or ideally be storefronts, but if not, then look like storefronts. And that's always been kind of challenging language. And so this was, is changing to use language that's sort of a defined term, so the urban residential building frontage type, to be a little bit more clear about what that should be and allow us to implement it a little bit better. Questions on that one? And this one's in Uptown. And I don't know, Shanna, do you want to just explain this one? Because I fumbled it this morning.
Yeah, this is one that's a recommendation coming from the council offices, so I'd be happy to talk about it. Historically, the Uptown sector plan has prohibited drive-throughs, and this amendment proposes to loosen the drive-through or drive-up regulations in Uptown to allow them to happen in more places. So we drew a boundary that is a 1/4 mile from Interstate 40, looking north, and any parcel within that boundary will now be able to do a drive up or drive through as long as it is not associated with a restaurant. So you will still continue to not see drive through Starbucks or McDonald's in the southern part of Uptown, but if you wanted to do a bank or a drive through pharmacy, you could do those in Uptown if you're within a 1/4 mile of that new mapped area. Any questions, Mike?
So did you say that this can still no longer apply to restaurants?
Correct. Restaurants will still not be able to do drive-ups. The text that Tara's got up on the screen there shows the new language that says, unless it's accessory to a use other than a restaurant.
But then there's the or. So to me that reads that it's allowed as accessory to any use but restaurants in the entire urban center, which I think is the existing language. And then
yeah, you're right. I explained it. I think I butchered it more than Tara did this morning. So we're 2 for 2, Tara. You're right. This will allow for a drive-up restaurant in addition to the other drive-through uses in Uptown, which has not been allowed in the past. So if you wanted to do a drive-through Starbucks or a McDonald's within a 1/4 mile of I-40 in the Uptown area, if this amendment passes, you will be able to do that in the future. Thank you for correcting me, Mike.
We're gonna have to record a separate version of just the explanation of this one to put on the website so that we get it right. Thanks for that.
Any
Mike.
questions about that now that we've clarified what it's actually doing?
No, I guess my only comment was like, this is pretty much a Winrock amendment.
It is, and we worked with the Uptown, what are they called? The Uptown Progress Team.
Oh, yep.
And some of the folks doing development in that area who requested this amendment. And also worth noting that during the COVID and pandemic era, drive-throughs have become very important to business and economic development. And so I think that we will see a couple of drive-through changes in the IDO annual update. And this is just one of them that acknowledges that this is a use that people are needing and wanting to do more. And so we should find smart ways to accommodate them.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. And I guess from the policy standpoint that Uptown's an urban center, which is part of the rationale for prohibiting it in the past. I mean, last year the city loosened some regulations on drive-throughs, but I believe all of Uptown being zoned MXH would still need to comply with the design regulations for drive-throughs, even though they're becoming allowable. So that seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, and that's exactly why the boundary was drawn from I-40. The closer Uptown is to I-40, the less walkable it really is, just because of the proximity to the highway. And that's why we're not allowing them everywhere in Uptown. We thought pretty carefully about what that boundary should be, to not, as I hate this phrase, throw the baby out with the bathwater and just allow them everywhere in Uptown. It's only in the areas that we really see as not being super walkable in the future, or now, really.
I have a question about traffic. What's that going to do to the traffic in that area?
Yeah, so anytime someone comes in with a drive-through development, that has to go through the city's transportation engineers, who make sure that the circulation for that drive-through happens on the site of the drive-through. We really don't want drive-through queues and lanes to be backing up into our roadways. In this instance, that would probably be Louisiana, for example. And so there are special and pretty thorough regulations in terms of how you lay out a drive-through site to make sure that traffic, that new traffic associated with that drive-through use, doesn't impede existing traffic on city streets.
Okay. Interesting.
Cool. Well, I'm going to keep running slides, but I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca. She has finally we figured out technology, and she has joined us in the Zoom room. So I'm going to let her finish out kind of explaining the next couple of small area regulation changes. So we will move to Los Duranes.
Great, thank you, Tara. Sorry about the delay. I've been fighting with Zoom half the day. It's just Monday. So this amendment to the proposed amendment to the Los Duranes CPO, sorry, I'm trying to make it a little bit bigger, simply clarifies that the staggered setbacks apply to both single family and duplexes. That wasn't clear in the effective text, and could have created kind of a loophole for somebody developing multiple duplexes in a row. So that's just tightening up that language. Any questions about that first part? All right. The second one is just clarifies where to measure from for that standard. Without 450 feet from Interstate Highway 40 could be from the center line, from the edge of the road. So this just clarifies that it's from the right of way. So they're measuring consistently throughout. Any questions about that one?
No.
All right. So for CPO 11, we also have two changes. This one, and I think it was just a miss in the original IDO, that the setback For the RA zone was 25 feet and then 20 feet in other zones. So that is just making that change back to the standard from the sector development plan. No questions? Okay. And the second one adds mixed use to the current non-residential or gives mixed use the same status as non-residential, that it won't be have parking lots between the buildings and the street. And so that just puts a little bit of restriction on parking in the mixed zone, but provides more consistency for where people are living. No questions?
No,
We had a question in the earlier session about this one, if that provision would be applicable to apartment development. And we clarified for that participant earlier that this is specific to mixed use and non-residential development. So if you're doing straight apartment development, that you would not have to comply with this provision.
Thank you for adding that. And I misspoke earlier. I said residential and not non-residential. So that's important because they're opposite. And I think we're ready to move on to, there we are, CPO 12. This takes an existing standard and applies it to any potential zoning in that character protection overlay. So, and then as the slide notes, it now applies to zones that don't necessarily exist in that area right now, but if there were a zone change and a new zone was allowed, this standard for facade variation would still apply.
I feel like I've commented on this before, so I think this is probably a good change.
I feel like that's likely.
And that's the end. That is all
Yeah,
the ones
that's all
that
of
we
them.
have to cover here.
I must have like blinked, but we missed my most important one that I came here for, which was the downtown parking exemption.
That's a good question.
And I can save you all my soapbox rant about parking, but
I mean, you can get it on the record.
that's
I can get that on the record at EPC too. So
Is that a change we're making, Tara, if it wasn't in the slides?
I think it's the change to the map is what, hang on one second. And we just don't say it super clearly. So yeah, so hold on one second. You did kind of blink, Mike.
That's what
Okay.
I thought.
So it's this, sorry, I don't want to start the presentation over again because it always starts at the very beginning. But it's this provision here, which is we're changing from the downtown area to the downtown center. And I think what you're talking about is that the downtown area is slightly larger than the downtown area. And so there will be some properties that lose this parking exemption. Is that the one you were talking about?
Yes, and this may have been caught up in I don't know when the small areas changes got pulled from the last annual update. And because this was being considered last year and was actually heard and commented on by the EPC, and the EPC made a recommendation to not make this change. So I just reiterate that. And I think I made a statement at EPC. I guess number one, parking exemptions is only one of like five rules in the IDO that use the downtown area compared to the downtown center. And so why would we be removing one but not others? And in shrinking your downtown, the parking exemption, there are properties, I guarantee, that will become non-conforming to parking requirements due to this potential change. And then my larger soapbox is we should just abolish parking citywide. So I think we should keep the rule the same, allow these developers who have built or will be developing potentially in the future in this mapped area the opportunity to just determine what parking they need for their project. But that's probably all for now.
Duly noted for the record. Thanks, Mike. Anything else?
That's all I have. Thank you all.
Thank you.
The other session, the other breakout room is still going. So if you want to hear about the West Side changes, I am headed over there, and I recommend everyone else head over there too.
Yay.
So
And if
how
you
do we
hit-
go back?
If you have breakout rooms along the bottom of your screen where the
Okay.
actually no, because we didn't put them in a separate breakout room. So you can just hit leave room and you'll have the option to leave the room or leave the meeting, and just pick leave room and it'll take you back to the main room, which is where the rest of the group is.
Okay, so I'll go back.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Tara. I'm sorry about the technical issues.
Not your fault.
All right, we'll see you.
Yeah.
Acknowledged that the buildings violated the ridge line, but then said that the person said that it wasn't, that the person thought it wasn't important, or I'm sorry, the person thought it wasn't significant, so approved it anyway, even though there was an acknowledgement of a violation of the ridge line.
Did that happen after adoption of the IDO?
That particular one, I think, happened before, but the point is that there was a violation of what was supposed to be there and acknowledged by the planning staff, but essentially ignored.
I'm not familiar with that, but if you let us know the property, we can kind of look into the case and do research about why that happened and try to put into
Well,
place.
it was part of a LUHO hearing, so it's in the past.
Okay.
But it's, it's all been documented.
I was just saying, if you wanted to share with me the location, then I could look into it. There's been lots of LUHO hearings along course. So if you don't recall or don't want to share that, that's fine also, but it just makes it
Well, it's
harder
already
for us
been
to do
done.
research.
It got approved and built.
But what I'm saying is if you wanted to give the city the opportunity to kind of do a debrief about errors that happened in the past and try to figure out how we can not make similar errors, like that seemed to me to be kind of the tenor of your question. And so I was offering that we could try to evaluate what happened and see if there's if we can figure out like procedures that we could put into place so that mistakes like that don't happen, because we do want to follow the rules. And if it was just one person, it'd just be interesting to find out why that happened and figure out how we can not make it happen again.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you're totally open to follow up on that, Carrie, and generally trying to explore your process and where things might have gone wrong in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
I see Renee has another question. Maybe after Renee's question, we should move on to the other material that you need to cover. Is that okay? Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead, Renee.
I think with what